Hi, church. Good morning. Welcome to Sunday and to our Sunday sermon time. You've probably heard it said that where there's a will, there's a way. But the comedian Ricky Gervais pointed out the truth that where there's a will, there's a relative. Yes, we're talking about family today. We all have them. Even orphans and foster kids at one point had birth parents. Now, for some of you, you might find that you have quite the mixed bag of nuts when it comes to family. You know what they say, every family has one weird relative. If you don't know who it is, then it's probably you. Just saying. Some have lots of siblings, some have none. There are those who grew up following in the footsteps and the shadow of older ace brothers who were good at everything, sports and academics. Or maybe you were the mothering older sibling sister yourself. Some have brilliant uncles and artistic aunts, while others have that strange aunt that's in the movie Christmas Vacation. Some have cousins that are inventors. Others have some cousins in jail. Some have dads that disappeared in the early days of their childhood. Some have lost mothers to cancer and to things like car accidents when they were in their teens. There are those who will be there to celebrate both their parents' 100th birthday. The one thing I can guarantee you about families is that no one has the same experience. Even those living in the same household growing up are going to have different thoughts about what family is because of their birth order, because of their relationships, because of their personalities, because of their perceptions of reality that differ. Family is different. Now, thinking about all of that, saying that for sure every family is unique, I will say one thing I can also promise you, though. Most of your experiences with family are not. You lost your mom in Walmart. You can't find her anywhere. Well, pretty much every child has done that as well. You broke a leg playing basketball against your brother. Yep, the hospital has seen that same accident and scenario before. Had that annoying aunt give you advice on childbearing and child raising, even though you really don't want your child to grow up like your annoying cousin. Yep, new mothers have faced that reality. So, what is it about the commonality of family? Well, it's kind of fun to watch that even Jesus has these same family stories, just like us. And just to remind ourselves, God picked out Jesus' mom and dad. Like an angel literally came down to earth and said, these should be the best parents of all. Now we know that Mary is virtuous and righteous and holy. And we know that Joseph is caring and patient and an excellent hardworking carpenter. Okay, but given all of that we do know about them, these best parents, right? These pillars of the faith, chosen by God, these same parents lost their child in the city during a festival. Actually, you know what? Let me read it to you to remind you how crazy this moment is in their family. Luke 2 says, every year Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. But they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they were back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him. What? Hear those points again. After the festival was over, his parents were returning home. They were already on the road. Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. After 3 days of looking, they find him. It takes them a whole day to even start looking for him. It's like the plot of Home Alone. It's like a horror story. This is the kind of thing that kids hate. This idea of being afraid, having that reality that you could possibly get stuck and left behind at Whale's Tail while everybody else leaves, and there you are. I'm sure this is how a movie like Night at the Museum got started. Somebody was afraid their parents were going to leave them in the museum. It's a reminder, though, to us, to see this in our Bible, that every family has these weird moments. Even the best parents make those kind of mistakes. In fact, as far as parenting goes, it should make you feel a little better about yourself at times when you do just silly little mistakes. That even Mary and Joseph did this. And actually, later on, Mary makes Jesus turn water into wine before his Messiah time. It even says that he turns to her and says, "My hour has not yet come." In other words, aka, "Hey, Mom, really? Not yet." And yet Mary doesn't care. Family, right? Today we are continuing with our walk through Mark, and we are in the 3rd chapter of Mark. And here we see a family situation that seems surprising at first to us. But once we unpack it, we're going to see there's a lot of pieces to this. It shows up right there. We're going to see in Mark 3:20, "Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat." Remember, so many people have been coming lately when he gets places that he can't even get to do things. "When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said he is out of his mind." Now, if you have older siblings or older sisters like I do, you know, and I am sure you have many occurrences of them looking at you and saying, "You're crazy, you crazy." I can tell you for a fact that my sister Susie has perfected the eye roll, the smirk. I can't even do it. She's so good at it. The eye roll, the smirk, and the head tilt at the same time. It's a classic move that I recognize and always have as, how are we related when I do something a little strange? But this is even more than the eye roll, head tilt, smirk. Jesus' family thought he was the crazy one in the family. Can you believe that? They thought that he was the weird relative. They worried that he would make them look bad. It makes me think of like presidential siblings. And there were lots of crazy ones. Like Jimmy Carter had Billy Carter, sometimes known for his Billy Beer, but he was even worse than that. He once urinated on reporters at an Atlanta runway. He even accepted $220,000 for a loan from the Liberian government. Or how about Bill Clinton? He had a brother, Roger Clinton, that he had to actually pardon because he got in trouble arrested for selling cocaine. Or even Barack Obama, you may not know, but he has a half-brother who has multiple wives and is known as a very serious Trump supporter. Who knew? Crazy, right? But what if Jesus was not seen as that saintly Jimmy Carter, but more by his family as Billy Carter? This just boggles the mind. He's going around talking about the kingdom. He's healing people. That's kind of weird stuff, though, right? They're thinking, I don't know about this. They're not thinking like we are when we read it. We're like, oh, Jesus, Redeemer of creation, great man who saves us all on the cross. They're thinking, that's my brother, that's my son, that's my child. They're thinking more like he's the drunk little brother at the bar that you need to go pick up because he's had too much to drive himself home. Can you imagine that? That they had that mentality about Jesus, that they thought, oh man, we gotta go take care of him. We gotta get him out of here. It's crazy, isn't it? For us to think as Christians that they had this image of Jesus. Now, to be fair, I do want to say that the same brothers are going to be very important to us after Jesus' death and resurrection. James, the book of James, yes, in the Bible, James, his brother, after his death will become the pillar in the early church. Him and Peter and Paul are going to be the three that keep really our faith going. But James is going to hold the line and hold the church together. All throughout the book of Acts, we see this. And we know James, after death and resurrection of Jesus, is going to become the seminal figure. So, okay, but during his time with Jesus, it's not that way. And how about Jude, the book of Jude, his other brother? Again, during his life, though, not that way. They weren't followers. They were doubters. Now, knowing all this kind of makes sense when we hear then Jesus' mother and brothers arrive a little bit later. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. So he's in this crowd gathered together, and they send somebody to go in and get him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, "Your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." You can see now, as of all this stuff that's just happened a few minutes ago, you can see how Jesus would be frustrated and respond, "Who are my mother and brothers?" he asked. Then he looked at those seated around him and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." Now, Gary Enzo has written a whole series. He's done a study on this kind of stuff. And he says one of the problems that families today have is that a husband and wife will join hands to form a family. And when they have a child, they put the child in the middle. The child comes along and they place that child in the middle of their circle. But now everything revolves around that child. And when you have two children, they both go in the circle. And you see, he's saying as the family becomes larger, the center becomes so big that the hands can't hold together, the father and mother, anymore. They're pulled apart. The circle gets broken. And he says as Christians, one of the changes that we need to make is that we need not to form a mother-father circle, but we need to put Jesus at the center and all hold hands. Father, mother, child. And so what Jesus is reminding us is that we need to grow the circle. We need to make the circle wide. We need to make it wider still. That he's saying that the people that were with him were also holding his hands. And the people that were with him were also his family. He's starting to teach us something. So this part of the scene is, yes, there's part of him being frustrated with his family, but there's so much bigger going on here. There's the teaching going on here that we need to hear. Sibylle Gouda says, at some point, the family you create is more important than the one you were born into. Or another way to say it, the family you come from is important, but the family you create should be your number one priority. He is saying, yes. Jesus is saying, yes, I get you. He's saying, you think you had a strange family? Come hear about mine. He's saying, yes, I get you. You had a rough childhood. I got left in a festival for 3 to 4 days, depending on how you read that. He says, yes, I get you. Your family doesn't understand you. It didn't then and it doesn't now. I understand you. I had that same thing happen. Jesus, in these stories of family, is showing all of us that no matter what issues we had, he knows them. I like the message that is said, and I actually might post it on your Facebook. There's a message coming out lately that says, if you don't come from a healthy family, make sure a healthy family comes from you. Jesus is saying, you as adults begin to develop your family. Now, how am I getting this Bible message out? You're thinking, Shannon, I've read that before. I didn't hear that. But let's look wider ourselves, not just make the circle wide. Let's look wider at the story and see all of Mark 3. And we'll see that in verses 13 to 19, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and they might send them out to preach. So this is the calling of the disciples happens in Mark 3. It says there were 12 he appointed, Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, meaning sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, who betrays him. He has chosen his new family, friends. The people that would have his back, that would walk with him, that would care for him. The disciples become for him the widening of the circle. They become for him his family. He has created his support team. This is why later we will hear that Jesus enters the house, and as the crowd gathers, so he and his disciples were not able to eat because there were so many people. The disciples are already with him. At that moment, when his family comes, shows up to take him away because they think he's crazy. Hi, gang, for coming on this morning. If you didn't watch from the beginning, we're at the point where Jesus' family, we've already said they think he's crazy. So they're coming in here and they're saying, we're going to take him away. But Jesus is already with his new family, his family of disciples. So when his family says he is out of his mind, we already see that he has made a new direction, that he has made a new team that will support him in all of this, that will support him as his other family is challenging his authority. He needed to make room both metaphorically and literally for these disciples. This is why he says, then he looked at those seated in the circle around him. Well, who's in the circle? His disciples, his new people, his chosen. And he says, here are my mother and my brothers. Family is not about blood. It is about who is willing to hold your hand when you need it most. Family isn't always blood. It's the people in our lives that want us in their lives. It's the people who accept us for who we are, the ones who will do anything to be there to hear our story, share our story, live our story. The people who make us smile more than they do make us cry. The people who love you no matter who you are. That is family, and it's not defined by DNA. As an adult, you have a choice. You can choose your family. Now, this doesn't mean that you drop all ties with those you were born around to, your blood relatives, but it does say that you need to decide who is there to support you. And if they're not the ones to support you, you need to find other people that do. You have a choice. Now, you should try to stay connected with them, but they may never understand you. Jesus has 2 brothers later that will understand him, but what about the rest of them? It doesn't say anything about them. You may be struggling in your adulthood to hold on to your siblings or your parents or your grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins or children or spouses, and maybe they're not the support team that you need. Maybe you have to ask yourself, are the people in my lives the one that are helping or hindering? Jesus made a choice. He knew that his time on earth was limited, so he needed people around him that could further the mission beyond his death. I like the blog by Meredith Kirby, who says, interacting with my biological relatives is often frustrating and exhausting for me. We don't see eye to eye, and trying to stay on tippy toes to reach is something that I can only do for so long. What a great image, right? She continues later in her blog saying, sometimes our blood relatives are our family, sometimes our friends are our family, sometimes our co-workers are our family, and eventually our significant others and our children might become our family. A lot of people even think about their pet as their family members, and it's no wonder. Your dog will probably do a better job of loving and supporting you in your life than your racist uncle ever will. Wow, she said it, right? She's talking about the fact that family drives you to the ER when you're sick. They'll be the one at the airport to pick you up when your plane ends. Family answers the phone when you need to vent, invites you over when you need a hug. Family remembers that one time that you did that and will joke with you about it, but if it's something serious, will also let it go. They get your inside jokes. They check on you to make sure you're okay. Family tells you when you're not okay. But they're going to love you into that. Not be like Jesus' family showing up to take him out because he's crazy. But there's some love in that too, right? And we got to process that. Family cheers for you when you succeed, is honest enough to tell you when you're making a mistake. Meredith says in there again, family protects you when you're in danger and steps back when it's time for you to stand on your own. Family knows all your secrets. Family sees the good and the bad and everything in between. Family loves you anyways. You choose your family. Choose wisely. Jesus and Meredith are saying that we are adults now, and it is us alone who decides who stands beside us. Jesus is choosing his family and invites us to do the same. He has shown us that he knows what families are like, and he shows us how to live into one. And he reminds us that we can't do it alone. And he says that he wasn't going to try, so why should we assume we should? We live in a time of social isolation, and it's not just social distancing during COVID. This is a whole generation of isolation. Most likely, people nowadays feel lonelier. They've done studies after study on this, that people nowadays feel lonelier than those generations before. Because of this part that we've kind of developed. We've allowed technology, we've allowed things to come into the way and break community. It's not new. COVID didn't cause this. But the truth is we can end it. We can end it by realizing Jesus wasn't alone, so why do we feel we have to be? Find the team that will be the assist you need, and you can get back into the game with them. Jesus knew he had to change his jersey. He had to change the team. The team that he was born into wasn't the one that had his back right then. Find the people. Stop blaming those who raised you and find someone who's going to lift you up. Find somebody that together is going to support you to achieve your goals and that you can help them achieve their goals. We all know this stuff, right? It's very cognitively sound in our heads, but like Jesus is reminding us here, we know it, but we also have to see others do it. And so we watch him and learn from him. Now, I personally have been very privileged in life, and I have to claim this right here, that I've been born into a loving family that didn't physically abuse me, that had no drug addicts selling drugs in our own house. Both my parents are still alive. I've never had to steal food to eat that night. And I know that these facts are going to put me in a, I hate to say luckier, but a reality of the majority of the world has to deal with even just these base realities for life. So I know some of you who have even dealt with some of these things are saying, Pastor Shannon, do you really know what you're talking about? And the truth is I don't. I don't know what your family life was like. Like I said, we share some commonalities, but nobody has the same family. But I do know from counseling some of you that sometimes the realities of the family you were born into pull down and drain you, like we see with Jesus. But I will tell you something. I may not know what you're going through, but Jesus knows what you're going through. Jesus walked the same road, and he's watched your road your whole life. He's been there, present, healing and helping and guiding. He knows what you're going through. Now, Jesus, in this story with family, is showing us a way to say there is an option. You know, it's funny to think about that he knows our very brokenness. He is the epitome of family. He knows our brokenness and loves us still. He knows our craziness and loves us still. He knows that we need him. And there's the good news, friend. The good news is he reminds us that we can walk a broken path for our whole life if we want to, but there's also another path we could choose. Another trail. We can either add to our family, we can make a new family, we could redefine our current family, we could gently step away from the family that we had and begin a new foraging path. We can shift it. We can shift ourselves. Now, I wonder a lot. I've been thinking about this week. Did Jesus even really need a family? I mean, think about it. Couldn't he have just like shown up, fully formed, the Messiah incarnate? Sure. I think he could have. But I think God wants us to see what family is like, what community is like. Did Jesus need the disciples? Man, we know they were a mixed bag he picked, right? Maybe not. Maybe he didn't need them. But we need friends. We need family. We need community. We need each other. And so he models for us how to live into that in all the variedness of it, in all the strangeness of it and the wonder of it. And he teaches us to live into that. We would have missed out on opportunity, and he doesn't want us to. He's teaching us to draw the circle wide. And as Christians, whatever your family looks like, whoever's in your family group, who's ever in your support team, remember this image, right? Do not feel like you are tucked around somebody in the middle as a person. Instead, see yourself tucked around the Trinity, 3 in 1. And if you do that, you're going to keep pushing this circle out, right? And gaining more family. That's what part of living is like. Part of our job is living into adulthood is to begin to know who we are by who around us is telling us our story. Not just us giving our story out, but allow others to be part of that. And you have the decision and the right to choose who is helping share and unpack your story. And if you find that people are pulling you down, if you find that people are hurting, it's okay to say, I'm giving less of you. Less of me to you, sorry. I'm giving less of me to you. And instead find that somebody lifts you up and helps you out. It's okay also to say, I want to spend more time with you. I want to share my story with you. Right now, during COVID-19, it's a great time to really ask yourself, who do you want to socially be connected to? Who enriches you? Who gives you hope? Who gives you light? Because you need it right now. We need it right now. So be able to ask yourself that question this week and connect with people. Jesus did, so we should. Amen.